Hi, freshmen. Let's read together book number 5 of the Odyssey. I'm going to do an instructional read aloud. You're going to see my annotations. If it were me, I would make your text look very similar to Mr. Allen's text. I'm going to read kind of a stanza at a time, and then I will explain why I annotated the way I annotated. You'll notice that some of my annotations are just slightly different than yours. Like, for instance, you underline a lot of the literary techniques, and I'm using a dashed underline because I have different annotations for my own personal use in this. So we'll kind of talk through a bit at a time. You can pause and stop the video anytime you want if you need to skip ahead, if you need to move around. This is a resource for you so that as we get into the Odyssey, you know what you're supposed to look for in annotations, and so that you'll be successful at annotating the text. All right, so let's get going. Up at the top, I put a note for myself that books 5 through 8 are Odysseus at sea, and he's coming, off of this shipwreck where he's on Calypso's Isle, and then he's going to leave Calypso's Isle, and that's the beginning of 5. And 5 through 8 is that. They're Odysseus at sea. So let's go ahead and let's get started. This is Odysseus, Nymph and Shipwreck. As dawn rose up from bed by her lordly mate, Tithonus, bringing light to immortal gods and mortal men, the gods sat down in council, circling Zeus, the thunder king, whose power rules the world. Athena began, recalling Odysseus to their thoughts. The goddess, deeply moved by man's long ordeal, held captive still in the nymph Calypso's house. Father Zeus, you other happy gods who never die, never let any sceptered king be kind and gentle now, not with all his heart or set his mind on justice. No, let him be cruel and always practice outrage. Think, not one of the people who he ruled remembers Odysseus now, that godlike man, and kindly as a father to his children. So that's the first stanza. So here's what I marked. I highlighted that very first 2 lines. I think that's some beautiful imagery right there. I made some notes for myself that Dawn is goddess of the morning and Tithonus is her husband. It's Priam's brother. I found that there was some kenning for Zeus right here. Thunder King means Zeus. And I did squiggle underline this held captive still in nymph Calypso's house. I felt like that was one of those important plot lines so that we know this is where Odysseus is. He's stuck in Calypso's house. I wrote myself a summary of this stanza, and I said that the gods remember Odysseus, and Athena is the one that's doing the reminding. And then right here, I had a kenning for Odysseus. So godlike man is another way of saying Odysseus. So let's keep going. Now, he's left to pine on an island racked with grief in the nymph Calypso's house. She holds him there by force. He has no way to voyage home to his own native land, no trim ships to reach. In reach, no crew to ply the oars and send him scudding over the sea's broad back. And now his dear son, they plot to kill the boy on his way back home. Yes, he has sailed off for news of his father to holy Pylos first, and then out to sunny hills of Lacedaemon. All I did in that one was I thought there was some good plot lines. They say that, he wants to go home. Odysseus wants to go home, and his son Telemachus is out searching for him. My child, Zeus, who marshals the thunderheads, replied, what nonsense you let slip through your teeth. Come now, wasn't the plan your own? You conceived it yourself. Odysseus shall return and pay the traitors back. Telemachus? Sail him home with all your skill. The power is yours, no doubt. Home to his native country, all unharmed, while the suitors limp to port, defeated, baffled men. So I did underline a couple things that I thought were important, and then I summarized for myself in the margins. So Zeus, he's mocking Athena here. He's saying, didn't you make this plan? It's blown up in your face? That's interesting, Athena, because you're the one who wanted this from the very beginning. With those words, Zeus turned to his own son Hermes. You are our messenger, Hermes, sent on all our missions. Announce to the nymph with lovely braids our fixed decree. Odysseus journeys home, the exile must return, but not in the convoy of the gods or mortal men. No, on a lashed makeshift raft and wrung with pains. On the 20th day he will make his landfall, fertile Scyria, the land of the Phaeacians, close kin to the gods themselves, who with all their hearts will prize him like a god and send him off in a ship to his own beloved land, giving him bronze and hoards of gold and robes, more plunder than he could ever have won at from Troy. If Odysseus had returned intact with his fair share, so his destiny ordains, he shall see his loved ones reach his high-roofed house, his native land at last. So I did a lot in this paragraph. I did put a box. I used blue for motifs, but this is our divine intervention. Zeus is intervening. And so he is a god, that's divine. He's intervening. He's saying this is what has to happen. I also underlined a couple in here saying this is what we have to do. Odysseus must return home. And I summarized over here for myself. I said a decree from Zeus. Zeus must return home. I did underline some words that I thought were interesting as we're talking about this raft, that he has to make a lashed makeshift raft and that he will be wrung with pains. Hasn't he already been wrung with pains the entire time? They're saying that the gods can't help Odysseus at all. He has to do this by himself. They can't just give him a raft. He has to make the raft. Here's plot. He's going to go to the land of the Phaeacians, and they will prize him like a god. And he kind of maps out what will happen to Odysseus next in the next couple books, so 5 through 8. He's going to travel first to Phaeacia and then on to Ithaca at the very end. That's his native land at last. I also put a box around here, so his destiny ordains. And, that's fate. If it's destiny, then it's fate. But I think it's interesting because up here, it's divine intervention, but down here it's fate. So which is it, right? Is it really fate or is it divine intervention? Which one's acting here? And it seems to me like it would be Zeus. So I don't know if it's really fate, but he says his destiny must bring him home. All right, here's the next one. So Zeus decreed, and the giant-killing guide obeyed at once. Quickly under his feet he fastened the supple sandals, ever-glowing gold, that wing him over the waves and boundless earth with the rush of gusting winds. He seized the wand that enchants the eyes of men whenever Hermes wants or wakes us up from sleep. That wand in his grip, the powerful giant killer swooped down from Pieria, down the high clear air, plunged to the sea and skimmed the wave like a tern that down the deadly gulfs of the barren salt swells glides and dives for fish, dipping its beating wings in bursts of spray. So Hermes skimmed the crests on endless crests, but once he gained the island worlds apart up from the deep blue sea, he climbed to dry land and strove on till he reached the spacious cave where the nymph with the lovely braids had made her home, and he found her there inside. Lots going on here. So there's a lot of terms. So there's a Homeric epithet right here, and guide is kenning for Hermes. Ever glowing gold is another epithet. Giant killer is both epithet and kenning for Hermes. I also found another one that I didn't actually mark. So deep blue for deep blue sea is another epithet, even though I forgot to mark it. I thought it interesting that he's skimming along the waves. It's like like when you skip a rock, right? So he's going so fast that he's like just skimming along the waves. So I kind of wrote that down here, right? Hermes skips across the waves like a thrown stone or a speedboat. And we have an epic simile. It goes for about 4 lines. And we're comparing Hermes to a bird skimming along the water, trying to find fish, which I think is interesting. And then this nymph with the lovely braids is kenning for Calypso. So now he's on the island, and here's a description of Calypso and her isle. A great fire blazed on the hearth, and the smell of cedar cleanly split, and sweet wood burning bright wafted a cloud of fragrance down the island. Deep inside she sang, the goddess Calypso, lifting her breathtaking voice as she glided back and forth before her loom. Her golden shuttle weaving thick, luxuriant woods grew round the cave, alders and black poplars, pungent cypress too, and there birds roosted, folding their long wings, owls and hawks, and the spread-beaked ravens of the sea. Black skimmers who make their living off the waves, and round the mouth of the cavern trailed a vine laden with clusters bursting with ripe grapes. 4 springs in a row, bubbling clear and cold, running side by side, took channels left and right. Soft meadows spreading round were starred with violets, lush with beds of parsley. Why, even a deathless god who came upon that place would gaze in wonder, heart entranced with pleasure. Hermes, the guide, the mighty giant killer, stood there spellbound. But once he had his fill of marveling at it all, he briskly entered the deep vaulted cavern. Calypso, lustrous goddess, knew him at once. As soon as she saw his features face to face. Immortals are never strangers to each other, no matter how distant one may make her home. But as for great Odysseus, Hermes could not find him within the cave. Off he sat on a headland, weeping there as always, wrenching his heart with sobs and groans and anguish, gazing out over the barren sea through blinding tears. But Calypso, lustrous goddess, questioned Hermes, seating him on a glistening, polished chair. God of the golden wand, why have you come? A beloved, honored friend, but it has been so long, your visit's much too rare. Tell me what's on your mind. I'm eager to do it, whatever I can do, whatever can be done. So that was a longer passage, right? A longer stanza. I thought beautiful stuff right here in the beginning. So I highlighted a lot. And then I underlined words that I thought were really interesting diction. I thought thick, luxuriant, right? Blazed, wafted. So we have our goddess Calypso. And here's an epithet right here. There's another down here when we're talking about our giant killer Hermes and the guide. There's some kenning. Calypso here is bewitching, right? She seems like a witch because we're entranced by her and her beauty. And she's also a symbol of fertility, nature, and abundance that's happening here. Not only are we describing Calypso, but also her island and the caves in which the trees that are around it, right? The environment, which all kind of coalesces in this idea of Calypso. And caves can sometimes be symbols of fertility. I underlined spellbound, right? Because she's bewitching. Down here, have you noticed they keep using lustrous goddess? And I think that they're trying to signal to us something about Calypso when they say the word lustrous. I underlined some lines here because I thought they were good plot lines. Odysseus is there. He's staring out to sea and he's blinded by his tears. I looked up lustrous. It's shining. She's a shining goddess. So here's another kenning for Hermes. And then I put a blue box around here. She sits him down in the best chair she has. She has a glistening, polished chair. And that's our xenia, right? Our hospitality, our Greek hospitality. We're going to see that again as we continue on. Okay. And the goddess drew a table beside him, heaped with ambrosia, mixed him deep red nectar. Hermes, the guide and giant killer, ate and drank. Once he had dined and fortified himself with food, he launched right in, replying to her questions. As one god to another, you ask me why I've come? I'll tell you the whole story, mince no words. Your wish is my command. It was Zeus who made me come, no choice of mine, who would willingly roam across a salty waste so vast, so endless. Think, no city of men in sight, not a soul to offer the gods a sacrifice and burn the fattest victims. But there is no way, you know, for another god to thwart the will of storming Zeus and make it come to nothing. Zeus claims you keep beside you a most unlucky man, most harried of all who fought for Priam's Troy, 9 years sacking the city in the 10th and then set sail for home. But voyaging back, they outraged Queen Athena, who loosed gales and pounding seas against them. There, all the rest of his loyal shipmates died, but the wind drove him on. The current bore him here. Now Zeus commands you to send him off with all good speed. It is not his fate to die here, far from his own people. Destiny still ordains that he shall see his loved ones reach his high-roofed house, his native land at last. So let's talk about this. She sits him down. She gives him ambrosia. She gives him a drink, and she gives him food. They have dinner. That's our xenia, our hospitality. She's being hospitable. There was a kenning and an epithet there. And then we get into some storytelling. Because they tell such long stories in here, I don't box the whole thing. I often will just put the blue line along the side so that I don't have to box all of it. But we do have him talking about, I will tell you the whole story. There's some storytelling. I thought that this line was interesting. Who would willingly roam across a salty waste so vast, so endless? Well, Odysseus has been doing it for years. So I don't know, maybe Odysseus. Here's a kenning for Odysseus right there. And then down here we have, once again, divine intervention and fate in the same stanza. So we have Zeus commands. Well, that's divine intervention. And then we say fate and destiny. So I put some boxes around here. And here's some plot lines right there. Zeus is commanding that we do this.